The windshield wipers fought against the snow, but they were losing the battle. Maya gripped the steering wheel tighter as her rental car crawled along the mountain road. What started as light flurries an hour ago had turned into something much worse. She should have listened to the gas station attendant back in town. The old man had warned her about the weather, shaking his head as he watched her fill up the tank. But Maya had a job to do. Dr. Peterson was expecting her at his research station, and this interview could make her career. Environmental stories didn't always get the attention they deserved, but this one was different. The climate data from these mountains could change everything. The radio crackled with static before cutting out completely. Maya fumbled for her phone, trying to keep one eye on the road. No signal, not even one bar. The snow was coming down so hard now that she could barely see 10 feet ahead. "Come on," she whispered to herself, leaning forward as if it would help her see better. The headlights cut through the white curtain, but the road seemed to disappear into nothing. That's when it happened. The car hit a patch of ice hidden under the fresh snow. Maya felt the steering wheel slip from her control as the car started to slide sideways. Time slowed down as she watched the guardrail rush toward her. She yanked the wheel hard to the left, but it was too late. The car spun once, twice, then slammed into a snowbank with a sickening crunch. The impact threw Maya against her seatbelt, and for a moment everything went quiet except for the sound of snow hitting the windshield. Maya sat there, breathing hard, her heart pounding in her chest. She was alive. That was something. But as she tried to start the car, the engine made a grinding noise and died. She tried again. Nothing. "Perfect," she muttered, pulling out her phone again. Still no signal. The battery was down to 12%. She looked around, trying to figure out where she was. The snow had covered most of the landmarks, but she remembered passing a sign for a hiking trail about a mile back. There had to be something up here. A ranger station, maybe, or at least a place to wait out the storm. Maya pulled on her winter coat and grabbed her backpack from the passenger seat. She had packed for a day trip, not a survival situation. A water bottle, some energy bars, and her laptop. Not exactly wilderness gear. The moment she opened the car door, the wind hit her like a wall. The cold bit through her jacket and jeans, and snow immediately started filling her boots. She had to lean into the wind just to stay upright. The road was completely buried now. Maya could barely tell where it ended and the forest began. But through the swirling snow, she saw something that made her heart skip. A thin line of smoke rising above the trees, maybe half a mile up the mountain. Smoke meant fire. Fire meant warmth. And warmth meant staying alive. Maya locked the car, though she wasn't sure why. Nobody else was crazy enough to be out here. She started walking toward the smoke, each step sinking deep into the snow. Her legs burned from the effort, and the wind kept trying to push her sideways off whatever path she was following. 20 minutes in, she was already exhausted. The snow was up to her knees now, and her jeans were soaked through. Her fingers were going numb despite her gloves, and she could barely feel her toes. The smoke seemed just as far away as when she started. Maya stopped to catch her breath, leaning against a tree. The wind howled through the branches above her, and snow kept falling from the sky like someone had torn open a giant pillow. She looked back toward where she thought her car might be, but there was nothing, just white in every direction. For the first time since the accident, real fear crept in. She could die out here. People got lost in storms like this all the time. They found them in the spring, usually. "No," she said out loud, surprised by how small her voice sounded in the wind. "Not today." She pushed off from the tree and kept walking, one foot in front of the other. The smoke was still there, still climbing into the gray sky. Someone was up there, and she was going to reach them. The next half hour was the longest of Maya's life. Her legs felt like lead, and she had to stop every few minutes to rest. The cold was creeping into her bones now, making her movements slow and clumsy. She stumbled more than once, catching herself on trees and rocks she couldn't see until she was right on top of them. But then, through a break in the trees, she saw it. A small log cabin, warm yellow light glowing in the windows. Smoke poured from a stone chimney, and someone had cleared a path from the front door to a woodpile. Maya wanted to run, but her legs wouldn't cooperate. She stumbled forward, using trees for support until she reached the wooden steps leading to the front porch. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely knock on the door. When it opened, Maya almost fell forward into the warmth. The man who answered was tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a thick beard. He wore a flannel shirt and jeans, and his hands looked like they'd seen plenty of hard work. For a split second, he just stared at her, taking in her soaked clothes and probably blue lips. Jesus. he said, reaching out to steady her. Get in here now! Maya didn't need to be asked twice. The moment she stepped inside, the warmth hit her like a physical thing. The cabin was small but cozy, with a fire crackling in a stone fireplace and the smell of something cooking on the stove. Sit down, the man said, guiding her to a chair near the fire. Don't move. He disappeared for a moment and came back with an armload of blankets. Maya was shivering so hard her teeth were chattering, and her hands wouldn't work right to take off her wet jacket. Here, let me help, he said, his voice gentle but urgent. He peeled off her soaked jacket and wrapped the blankets around her shoulders. We need to get you out of those wet clothes before hypothermia sets in. Maya nodded, unable to speak through her chattering teeth. The man handed her a thick sweater and pointed toward a small bathroom. Change into this. Everything off. Your body needs to warm up gradually. When Maya came back wearing the oversized sweater that hung down to her knees, the man had a mug of something hot waiting for her. She wrapped her hands around it gratefully, letting the warmth seep into her fingers. I'm Jake, he said, settling into the chair across from her. And you're either very brave or very stupid to be out in this weather. Maya managed a weak laugh. Probably both. I'm Maya. My car went off the road about a mile down the mountain. Jake nodded, looking out the window at the storm. You're lucky you found this place. This storm isn't supposed to let up for days. Days? Maya's heart sank. She thought about Dr. Peterson waiting for her, about her editor expecting the story, about her car buried somewhere in the snow. Maybe longer, Jake said. But don't worry. We've got plenty of food and firewood. You'll be safe here until the road's clear. Maya looked around the cabin, really seeing it for the first time. It was simple but well-maintained, with shelves full of books and canned goods. Everything was organized and clean, like someone who took care of this place year-round. Do you live here? She asked. Jake hesitated for just a moment. Sometimes, I take care of the place. Something in his tone made Maya look at him more closely. There was something about the way he carried himself, confident and sure, that didn't quite match the simple cabin. But the hot drink was making her drowsy, and the warmth from the fire was finally reaching her bones. Thank you, she said quietly. You probably saved my life. Jake met her eyes, and for a moment Maya saw something there. Sadness maybe, or regret. But then he smiled and it was gone. Just glad I was here, he said. Storm like this, nobody should be alone. Maya woke up to the smell of bacon and coffee. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then she heard the wind howling outside and remembered everything. The storm, the crash, stumbling through the snow to find this cabin. She was lying on a comfortable couch near the fireplace, wrapped in thick blankets. The fire was still going strong, which meant Jake must have been up early to tend to it. Through the window she could see the snow was still falling just as hard as yesterday. Good morning, Jake called from the kitchen area. Hope you're feeling better. Maya sat up slowly, testing how her body felt. Much better than last night, though her legs were still sore from trudging through the snow. Much better, thanks to you. Jake brought over a plate of eggs, bacon, and toast that looked like it belonged in a fancy restaurant. Maya stared at it in surprise. This wasn't the kind of simple breakfast she'd expected from a mountain cabin. Wow, this looks amazing, she said, taking a bite. It tasted even better than it looked. Where did you learn to cook like this? Jake shrugged, pouring himself a cup of coffee. You pick things up when you spend a lot of time alone. Food tastes better when you put effort into it. Maya noticed he hadn't really answered her question, but the food was too good to worry about it. As she ate, she watched Jake move around the kitchen. He knew exactly where everything was, opening cabinets and drawers without looking. Everything was perfectly organized, from the spice rack to the stack of cloth napkins that seemed too nice for a simple mountain cabin. How long have you been taking care of this place? Maya asked. A few years, Jake said, settling into the chair across from her. The owner doesn't come up much anymore, so I keep an eye on things. Lucky me that you were here, Maya said. What are the chances? Something flickered across Jake's face, but it was gone before Maya could figure out what it meant. Yeah, lucky. After breakfast, Jake showed her around the cabin. It was bigger than it looked from the outside, with a loft bedroom, a small office space, and a storage room filled with enough supplies to last months. Maya noticed that some things seemed out of place for a simple caretaker's cabin. The books on the shelves included expensive first editions and academic texts on business and environmental science. The office had a high-end computer setup that must have cost thousands of dollars. The owner must really trust you, Maya said, running her finger along the spine of a book about sustainable energy. This is some serious reading material. Jake glanced at the book and nodded. He's interested in a lot of different subjects. What does he do for work? Business, Jake said quickly. Different investments and projects. Maya sensed he didn't want to talk about it, so she changed the subject. But she made a mental note of how uncomfortable he seemed whenever she asked about the cabin's owner. By afternoon, the storm was still raging. Maya tried her phone again, but there was still no signal. The battery was down to 5%, so she turned it off to save what little power she had left. Don't worry about it, Jake said, noticing her frustration. These storms usually knock out the cell towers anyway. We'll be cut off until it passes. They spent the day talking by the fire. Maya told him about her work as an environmental journalist, about the stories she'd covered and the places she'd traveled. Jake listened carefully, asking thoughtful questions that showed he understood more about environmental issues than most people. You really know your stuff, Maya said after Jake had asked a particularly insightful question about carbon offset programs. Have you studied environmental science? Just interested in the subject, Jake said. Hard not to be when you spend time in places like this. You see how fragile it all is? Maya nodded, looking out at the snow-covered mountains. That's exactly why I do what I do. People need to understand what we're losing. And what about you? Maya asked. What's your story? How did you end up here? Jake was quiet for a long moment, staring into the fire. Sometimes you need to get away from everything. Figure out who you really are when no one's watching. There was something in his voice that made Maya think he was talking about more than just taking care of a cabin. She wanted to ask more, but something told her to wait. Whatever Jake was running from or working through, he'd tell her when he was ready. That evening, Jake cooked another incredible meal. This time it was some kind of fish with herbs that he somehow had fresh. Even though they were snowed in on a mountain, Maya was starting to realize that this cabin was stocked better than most high-end kitchens. Jake, she said carefully, can I ask you something? Sure, this place. It's not really a normal caretaker situation, is it? Jake stopped cutting his food and looked at her. What do you mean? The books, the computer, the food, even the way you cook. It's like, she paused, trying to find the right words. It's like you're not just taking care of this place. You're living here, really living here. Jake was quiet for a long time. Finally, he sighed. You're very observant. It's part of my job, Maya said gently. I'm not trying to pry. I'm just curious. The owner, he comes here to think, to be someone different than who he has to be in the regular world. Jake said slowly, this place is important to him, more than just a vacation cabin. And you know him pretty well? Jake nodded. Yeah, I know him. Maya had the feeling there was a lot more to the story, but she didn't push. Everyone had their secrets, and Jake had saved her life. He deserved his privacy. After dinner, they played cards and talked about books they'd both read. Maya was surprised to discover that Jake had read several of her articles online. He remembered details and quoted specific parts back to her. You have a really good memory, she said. Your writing sticks with you, Jake replied, especially the piece you did about the coal mining company in West Virginia. That was powerful stuff. Maya felt a flush of pride. That article had taken months of research and had nearly gotten her fired when the mining company threatened to sue. Thank you. That means a lot. You made people care about something they'd never thought about before, Jake said. That's not easy to do. As the night went on, Maya found herself really enjoying Jake's company. He was smart and funny, with strong opinions about everything from environmental policy to the best way to make coffee. But there was also something guarded about him, like he was always thinking before he spoke. When she finally went to bed on the couch, Maya lay awake listening to the storm outside. Jake had given her the main sleeping area while he took the loft, which was just another sign that he was a genuinely good person. But she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something he wasn't telling her. The expensive books, the high-end equipment, the way he seemed to know so much about business and environmental issues, and most of all, the way he talked about the cabin's owner like he was talking about someone else entirely. Maya pulled the blankets up to her chin and watched the firelight dance on the ceiling. Tomorrow, if the storm let up, maybe she'd get some answers. But tonight she was just grateful to be warm and safe with someone who seemed to genuinely care about making sure she was okay. Outside, the wind continued to howl and the snow kept falling. Maya woke up on the third morning to the sound of Jake chopping wood outside. The storm had finally weakened enough that she could actually see the trees through the falling snow. She stretched and checked her phone, which she'd been keeping turned off to save battery. When she powered it on, 2 bars of signal flickered on the screen. Her heart jumped. Finally, a connection to the outside world. The phone immediately started buzzing with notifications. Missed calls, text messages, emails. Maya scrolled through them quickly, most from her editor asking where she was and if she was okay. But then she saw a news alert that made her stop cold. Tech billionaire vanishes from Manhattan penthouse. Family and investors in panic. Maya clicked on the article, her journalist instincts taking over. The story was from 2 days ago, just after she'd gotten stranded. She read the first few lines and her blood went cold. Alexander Reed, CEO of Reed Industries and one of the youngest billionaires in America, disappeared from his Manhattan apartment sometime Monday evening. Security footage shows him leaving the building alone, but his car was found abandoned at a parking garage near Central Park. His assistant says he missed several important meetings and hasn't responded to calls or messages. Maya stared at the accompanying photo. The man in the expensive suit had short, perfectly styled hair and was clean-shaven. But the eyes were unmistakable. She'd been looking into those same eyes for 3 days. Her hands shaking, she quickly searched for more information. Alexander Reed, 34 years old, CEO of a green technology company worth billions. Recently under investigation by Congress for environmental claims that might not be true. His sister Lisa had died in a skiing accident 3 years ago at a resort in Colorado. This resort, this mountain. Maya's mind raced as pieces started falling into place. The expensive books about business and environmental science. The high-end computer equipment. The way Jake knew so much about everything. The way he cooked like someone who'd eaten at the world's best restaurants. How he talked about the cabin's owner, like he was talking about someone else because he was talking about someone else. The person he used to be. The cabin door opened and Jake came in carrying an armload of firewood. He was wearing a thick winter coat and his cheeks were red from the cold. He looked exactly like what he claimed to be. A simple caretaker taking care of a mountain cabin. "Storm's finally letting up," he said, setting the wood down by the fireplace. "Might be able to get cell service soon." "I already have some," Maya said quietly, holding up her phone. Jake froze. For just a moment she saw panic flash across his face before he got control of it. "That's good. You can let people know you're safe." Maya looked at her phone screen, then back at Jake. No, not Jake, Alexander Reed. One of the richest men in America, who was supposed to be missing and possibly dead somewhere in New York City. "Already did," she said. "Also caught up on some news I missed." Jake's shoulders tensed, but he kept his back to her as he arranged the firewood. "Anything interesting?" "You could say that." Maya's voice was steady, but her heart was pounding. "Apparently a very important businessman went missing a few days ago." "Alexander Reed, maybe you've heard of him?" Jake went completely still. The silence stretched between them like a cable about to snap. Finally, he turned around and Maya saw that all pretense was gone from his face. He looked tired and sad and completely defeated. "How long have you known?" he asked quietly. "About 10 minutes, Maya said, though I should have figured it out sooner. The books, the way you know about environmental science, how you cook, even the way you've been talking about the cabin's owner." Alexander, she couldn't think of him as Jake anymore, sat down heavily in the chair across from her. He put his head in his hands and was quiet for a long time. "Are you going to turn me in?" he asked finally. Maya studied his face. "That depends. Why are you here? Why did you disappear?" Alexander looked up at her and she saw something raw and honest in his expression. "Because I couldn't face what I'd become. And because this is the only place I can still feel close to my sister. Lisa," Maya said softly. His eyes widened in surprise. "You really did your research?" "It's what I do," Maya said. "She died here, didn't she?" "In the skiing accident." Alexander nodded, looking out the window at the snow-covered mountains. 3 years ago next month. We used to come here every winter when we were kids. Our parents would rent this cabin and we'd spend weeks hiking and skiing and just being normal kids instead of rich kids." "So you bought the place?" "After she died, yeah. The owners were getting old and wanted to sell anyway. I couldn't stand the thought of someone else having it, changing it." He was quiet for a moment. "Lisa loved it here. She said it was the only place where we could just be ourselves. Maya felt a twist of sympathy in her chest, but she pushed it aside. She was a journalist first. What about the congressional investigation? The environmental issues with your company? Alexander's face darkened. That's why I had to leave. My business partner, the guy who helped me start the company, he'd been lying to me for years, faking environmental data, bribing officials, covering up problems. I found out about it the day before I disappeared. And you just ran away? I didn't run away, Alexander said, a flash of anger in his voice. I came here to figure out what to do. Do you have any idea what it's like to discover that everything you've built, everything you believe in, is based on lies? Maya leaned forward. So what's your plan? Hide up here forever while investors panic and your employees wonder if they'll have jobs? No, Alexander said firmly. I'm going back. I'm going to fix this mess, even if it destroys me. But I needed time to think, to figure out how to do it right. And how do you do it right? Alexander was quiet for a moment, then met her eyes. By telling the truth, all of it. By firing everyone who was involved in the cover-up, even if they're my friends. By implementing real environmental standards, even if it costs us millions. By being the kind of company Lisa would have been proud of. Maya studied his face, looking for any sign that he was lying or trying to manipulate her. But all she saw was exhaustion and determination and genuine regret. The data your partner falsified, she said slowly. Do you have proof? Everything. Lisa was actually the one who figured it out. She was working as a consultant for us, doing independent environmental assessments. She found discrepancies in the data and was putting together a report. His voice got quiet. She was supposed to present it to me the day she died. Maya felt her journalist instincts kicking into high gear. This wasn't just a story about a missing billionaire. This was a story about corporate corruption, environmental cover-ups, and a man trying to make things right. Alexander, she said carefully, what if I told you there was a way to make this right? A way to expose the truth and save your company at the same time? He looked at her with interest. I'm listening. You give me exclusive access to everything. All the documents, all the proof. Interviews with everyone involved. I tell the story the right way, focusing on accountability and reform instead of just scandal. Alexander was quiet for a long time, considering her offer. And in return? You get to control the narrative. Instead of looking like a CEO who ran away when things got tough, you become the whistleblower who exposed corruption in his own company. Why would you do that for me? Maya smiled. Because the truth matters more than a sensational headline. And because I think your sister would have wanted the real story to come out. Alexander looked out the window again, watching the snow fall. When he turned back to Maya, there was something like hope in his eyes. Okay, he said. Let's do it. That night, Maya and Alexander sat at the kitchen table surrounded by papers, laptops, and empty coffee cups. The storm had finally stopped, but neither of them seemed to notice. They were too busy planning how to expose one of the biggest corporate scandals in years. Alexander had opened his laptop and pulled up files that Maya couldn't believe existed. Internal emails, financial records, scientific reports with data that had been changed. Everything his business partner David Chen had done to hide the truth about their company's environmental impact. Look at this, Alexander said, pointing to a spreadsheet on his screen. These are the real pollution numbers from our factories. And this is what David reported to the government. Maya whistled low. The difference was huge. How did you not know about this? Because I trusted him, Alexander said, running his hands through his hair. David handled all the regulatory stuff. I focused on the technology and the big picture. I thought we were actually making a difference. Maya scrolled through more documents. The evidence was overwhelming. David had been systematically lying about environmental data for at least 3 years, maybe longer. He'd bribed inspectors, falsified reports, and even hired fake scientists to back up his claims. Your sister figured this out? Maya asked. Alexander nodded, pulling up another file. Lisa was brilliant. PhD in environmental science from MIT. When I hired her as a consultant, I thought it would just be a formality. You know, keep it in the family. But she actually did the work. The file was Lisa's final report, unfinished but damning. Maya could see where she'd identified problems with the data, traced discrepancies, and started building a case. The last entry was dated the day before her skiing accident. She was going to tell you about this the next morning, Maya said quietly. Yeah, we were supposed to have breakfast before she went skiing, but I got called into an emergency board meeting about some investor crisis. I told her we'd talk when she got back from the slopes. Alexander's voice was barely above a whisper. She never came back. Maya felt her chest tighten. Alexander, her accident. You don't think it was connected to this, do you? The police said it was just an accident. Icy conditions, she took a turn too fast, hit a tree. But Lisa was an expert skier. She'd been skiing these mountains since she was 5 years old. He was quiet for a moment. I've wondered about it every day for 3 years. They worked in silence for a while, Maya taking notes and organizing the evidence while Alexander explained the technical details. The scope of the cover-up was staggering. It wasn't just about hiding pollution numbers. David had created an entire fake environmental program, complete with phony research and made-up success stories. How much money are we talking about? Maya asked. In government grants and investor funding based on false claims, maybe $200 million. Maya sat back in her chair. This is going to destroy your company. Maybe, Alexander said. But it should. If we can't operate honestly, we don't deserve to exist. What about your employees? The people who had nothing to do with this? Alexander had clearly thought about this. That's the hardest part. We employ about 8,000 people. Most of them are good people doing honest work. But I can't protect them by covering up crimes. Maya studied his face. You're really willing to lose everything to make this right? What's the alternative? Keep lying? Pretend I don't know. That's not the person Lisa raised me to be. Alexander pulled up a photo on his phone. It showed him and a young woman with dark hair and a brilliant smile, both of them in ski gear on a mountain that looked like the one outside the cabin window. She was only 2 years younger than me. But she was always the one keeping me honest, Alexander continued. When we were kids and I'd try to cheat at board games, she'd call me out. When I got to college and started caring more about parties than grades, she'd show up at my dorm and drag me to the library. She sounds amazing, Maya said. She was going to change the world. Real environmental science, not the fake stuff David was peddling. She had plans for new research, better technology, actual solutions. Alexander closed the laptop. I can't bring her back, but I can make sure her work wasn't wasted. Maya made a decision. I want to help you do more than just expose this. I want to help you fix it. What do you mean? The story I write doesn't have to be about the fall of Alexander Reed. It can be about accountability and redemption, about a company that faced its mistakes and chose to do better. Alexander looked skeptical. You think people will buy that? If we do it right, yes. But it means you have to be completely transparent. No hiding, no spinning, no trying to minimize the damage. You tell the truth. Fire everyone who was involved, pay back every penny that was stolen, and commit to real environmental standards going forward. And you think that will save the company? Maya shrugged. It might. People want to believe that companies can change. Look at what happened with some of the banks after the financial crisis. The ones that owned up to their mistakes and made real changes came out stronger. Alexander was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the mountains. Lisa would have said the same thing. She always believed people were basically good, that they'd do the right thing if you gave them the chance. So we give them the chance, Maya said. We tell them the truth and let them decide. They spent the next few hours planning their strategy. Maya would write a series of articles starting with Alexander's disappearance and discovery of the fraud, then moving through the evidence and his plan to make things right. Alexander would return to New York, hold a press conference, and begin the process of cleaning house. What about David? Maya asked. Have you talked to him since you left? Alexander shook his head. He's been calling and texting constantly, probably panicking about where I am and whether I've figured out what he's been doing. You're going to have to confront him. I know, and I'm going to have to do it with lawyers present. Because what he did wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. Maya looked at the mountain of evidence they'd assembled. Are you scared? Terrified, Alexander admitted. I've never done anything like this before. I've spent my whole life trying to be successful, trying to build something. Now I'm about to tear it all down. Not tear it down, Maya corrected. Transform it. There's a difference. Alexander smiled for the first time since she'd confronted him about his identity. You really think this can work? I think you're about to find out what kind of person you really are, Maya said. And I think your sister would be proud of you for trying. Outside, the snow had finally stopped completely. The sky was beginning to clear, and Maya could see stars appearing between the clouds. Tomorrow they would have to leave this peaceful cabin and return to the real world. Alexander would have to face the consequences of his business partner's crimes and his own choices. But tonight, they had a plan. And for the first time in 3 years, Alexander Reed had hoped that he could honor his sister's memory by doing the right thing, no matter what it cost him. "One more thing," Maya said as they finally started cleaning up their work. "When we get back to civilization, you're going to have to cut your hair and shave that beard. You can't show up to a press conference looking like a mountain man." Alexander laughed, running his hand through his overgrown hair. "I don't know. I was kind of getting used to it. Trust me," Maya said. "The world needs to see Alexander Reed, not Jake the caretaker. People need to know that you're taking responsibility as yourself, not hiding behind someone else." Alexander nodded. "You're right. Time to stop hiding." The helicopter blades chopped through the mountain air as Maya and Alexander flew back toward civilization. Alexander sat quietly, staring down at the cabin growing smaller below them. He'd shaved off his beard that morning and cut his hair short. Even in his borrowed clothes, he looked like the billionaire CEO the world expected to see. Maya watched him carefully. In the past hour, she'd seen him transform from Jake the mountain caretaker back into Alexander Reed. The change was more than just physical. His shoulders were straighter, his jaw set with determination. But she could also see the fear in his eyes. "You ready for this?" she asked over the noise of the helicopter. Alexander nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." The pilot radioed ahead, and Maya could hear the excitement in the air traffic controller's voice when he realized who was on board. By the time they landed at the small regional airport, news vans were already arriving. Alexander's assistant Rebecca was waiting with a car, tears streaming down her face. She hugged him tightly without caring who was watching. "Sir," everyone thought. "We were so worried," she said. "I'm sorry, Rebecca. I had some things to figure out. But I'm back now and we have work to do." The drive to Denver took 3 hours. Alexander spent most of it on the phone with lawyers, his board of directors, and federal investigators who had been called in when he disappeared. Maya listened to him explain over and over that he was fine, that he'd be back in New York tomorrow, and that he had important information about his company. When they reached the hotel, Maya finally got a chance to call her editor. "Maya, thank God you're alive."
"Where have you been?"
Tom's voice was frantic, snowed in on a mountain. "But Tom, I've got the story of a lifetime. Remember that missing billionaire Alexander Reed? Yeah, the FBI is looking for him." "Why?" Maya smiled. "Because I've been living in a cabin with him for 5 days, and he's about to blow the whistle on the biggest environmental fraud in corporate history." The silence on the other end lasted so long that Maya thought the call had dropped. Finally, Tom spoke. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious. And I have exclusive access to everything. Documents, interviews, the whole story. But we need to do this right." While Maya worked with her editor to plan the article series, Alexander was 3 floors up in a conference room facing the hardest conversation of his life. David Chen, his business partner and childhood friend, sat across from him with 2 lawyers and a public relations specialist. "Alex, thank God you're okay," David said when Alexander walked in. "We've been going crazy trying to find you. The stock price has crashed, investors are panicking, the board wants answers." Alexander sat down slowly, studying the face of the man he'd trusted for 15 years. "I bet they do want answers. The question is whether you're going to give them honest ones this time." David's smile faltered. "What do you mean?" Alexander slid a folder across the table. "I mean these. The real environmental data from our factories. The reports you falsified. The bribes you paid to inspectors. Should I go on?" The color drained from David's face. His lawyers immediately started whispering in his ears, but Alexander held up his hand. "Before you say anything, David, I want you to know that I've already turned copies of everything over to federal investigators. This isn't a negotiation. This is me giving you one chance to do the right thing." "Alex, listen to me," David said, his voice desperate. "You don't understand the pressure we were under. The environmental standards were impossible to meet. Everyone in the industry was cutting corners. Everyone in the industry wasn't claiming to be a green technology company," Alexander shot back. "Everyone in the industry wasn't taking government grants for environmental research. And everyone in the industry wasn't lying to investors about their environmental impact." David looked around the room, seeing no support from his legal team. "What do you want?" "I want you to resign immediately." I want you to cooperate fully with federal investigators, and I want you to publicly admit what you did. And if I don't, Alexander's voice was ice cold, then you'll find out what it's like to have the full weight of Reed Industries' legal team working against you, instead of for you. David was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. Okay, I'll do it. But Alex, this is going to destroy the company. You know that, right? Maybe, but at least it'll be honest. The next morning, Maya's first article went live online. The Billionaire Who Disappeared. Inside Alexander Reed's journey from corporate scandal to redemption. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times. The story painted Alexander not as a villain, but as a CEO who had discovered corruption in his own company and chosen to expose it rather than cover it up. Alexander held his press conference that afternoon. Standing behind a podium in his company's Manhattan headquarters, he looked directly into the cameras and told the world the truth. 3 years ago, my sister Lisa discovered that Reed Industries was not living up to its environmental promises. He began. She was killed in a skiing accident before she could present her findings to me. This week I finally learned what she had discovered. The room was dead silent as Alexander laid out the evidence. He named names, showed documents, and took full responsibility for not catching the fraud sooner. When reporters started shouting questions, he answered everyone honestly, even when the answers made him look bad. Are you saying you had no idea what your business partner was doing? One reporter asked. That's exactly what I'm saying. And that's my failure as a CEO. I should have been paying closer attention. I should have verified our claims instead of trusting someone else to handle it. What happens to Reed Industries now? Alexander took a deep breath. We're going to rebuild from the ground up. We're implementing new oversight systems, hiring independent environmental auditors, and establishing a board position specifically for environmental accountability. We're also setting up the Lisa Reed Foundation for Environmental Truth, which will fund independent research and whistleblower protections. How much is this going to cost the company? Everything if necessary. We're prepared to pay back every penny of fraudulent government grants plus penalties. We're budgeting $200 million for environmental cleanup and another $50 million for the foundation. After the press conference, Maya found Alexander sitting alone in his office, staring out at the New York skyline. How do you feel? She asked. Alexander was quiet for a moment. Scared, exhausted, but also lighter somehow. Like I can finally breathe again. Maya's phone had been buzzing all day with calls from other news outlets wanting to interview her. Her editor was already talking about turning the story into a book. But all she could think about was the man sitting across from her, who had chosen to do the right thing even when it meant losing everything. The stock price is up 12% since your press conference, Maya said. Looks like investors like honesty. Alexander laughed. Who would have thought? 6 months later, Maya returned to the Colorado cabin to write her follow-up story. Reed Industries had survived the scandal, emerging as a leader in transparent environmental practices. David Chen was facing federal charges but had cooperated fully with investigators. Alexander had kept his promise about reforming the company, even when it meant firing longtime friends who had been involved in the cover-up. She found Alexander there, teaching a group of business students about corporate responsibility. He looked healthier than she'd ever seen him, despite the gray hairs that had appeared since the scandal broke. Any regrets? Maya asked him after the students left. Alexander looked out at the mountains where his sister had died, where he'd found the courage to tell the truth, and where he'd met the journalist who helped him find his way back to the person Lisa had raised him to be. Just one, he said. I wish Lisa could have seen how this turned out. I think she would have been proud, Maya smiled. I think she would have been too. Outside, snow was beginning to fall again, but this time it looked peaceful instead of threatening. Sometimes the worst storms, Maya thought, led to the clearest skies.